Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday night segment of Divine Femininity United. I'm your girl, Dr. Bianca Miss B. Lee, and we are here for another portion reading through the amazing second book, The Shack Revisited. This is the sequel that I only just recently knew existed. And so when I learned of it, which was last week, when I learned of it, I said, oh, we gotta do it. And how fitting. The timing was perfect because we just finished The Shack. Okay. So on Sunday, 2 days ago, we began this book and we went through the process of the story behind the story, what led to it. So the story behind the story was the author, William P. Young. Okay. That is the author of The Shack. We learned that Mackenzie Allen Phillips, which was the main character inside of the story, all of the characters actually inside of the story were actual fictional characters. However, they were based on true events, so to speak. Okay. So we learned that this was roughly the story of William Young's life. Okay. The author's life. Wow, wow, wow. Now, Willie, excuse me, was the best friend of Mackenzie in the book. When it turns out, we learned on Sunday, the book was about William. So that was a bit of a revelation. Okay. So that was awesome. And then we learned the story with that we recapped on the story within the story, which was Mackenzie's story, Missy, his youngest daughter, being abducted, the whole 9 yards, him visiting the shack, having his weekend with Papa, which was God, and then Jesus, and then Sarayu, which was representative of the Holy Spirit. So broke down the story, all of those things. It was so good, very transformative. Oh my God, it was so good, written beautifully. Okay, and then we got information about the author of this book, The Shack Revisited, which the foreword was done by William Young, the author of The Shack, but this book is actually written by C. Baxter Kruger, and Baxter for short. He told the story about how he got wind of this book, how he got it. People were talking about the book. Oh, you need to read it. You need to read The Shack. You need to. And so he just kind of broke down and was like, with everybody insisting on him reading it, he was like, okay, whatever. I'm going to read the book. Goodness. Okay. So he read it and was stuck, just like the rest of us. Page Turner. Okay. He was invested all inside of the book. I mean, saw himself, felt every little thing, everything that we all went through when we read the book ourselves, right? So he said, man, I have to break this down, man, because he's a psychiatrist. He said, I have to break this down in psychology and, theology. I gotta really break down these gems from the book, right? And that's what this is. The Shack Revisited, this time on a dissecting type of type of vibe, where we're gonna go through and he broke down everything from all of the major points, all of the major nuggets and things like that, and the takeaways. So I'm excited. So today, of course, Sunday we went through the forward, the prologue, the all of the things, the intro, the introduction to this book. And so now today we are officially beginning chapter 1. Okay. There are parts of the book. So we're entering part 1. Okay. Now, these chapters are very short. Very short. So I have projected that we will read the first 5 chapters today. Okay. So, and I really do predict that we're going to zoom through those, which is good because today is Christmas Eve. And I said, yeah, we're going to go live today because, I know you all are home, you're with your children, you're with the family and things like that. And so what a better time while you're wrapping gifts. If you're celebrating, you're wrapping gifts and you're cooking big dinners and all of those things. And you can kind of put me on play and just set it and forget it. Let me play in the background and be the storyteller and be the ambiance setter for your evening with your family. How cool is that? And this is going to be so good. So I want to thank you for allowing me, if you're playing in your homes, I want to thank you for allowing me in your home. I want to thank you for allowing my presence to be with you. And thank you for sharing your energy with me. We're airing live on multiple platforms: Clubhouse, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, all of the things. Okay, so hello, hello, hello to everyone on every side. At any point, you hear something that resonates with you and you want to add to and want to give a comment or even just say, wow, that's awesome. Oh my goodness, I didn't think about that. Whatever it was, use the chat, use the comment section. That's what it's there for. Okay. Without further ado, here we go. Part 1. It is entitled Some First Thoughts on Papa. Chapter 1, The Shocker. Here's a quote from Papa from the book, The Shack. Well, Mackenzie, don't just stand there gawking with your mouth open like your pants are full. Come and talk to me while I get supper on. That was a quote from Papa. I absolutely love how Papa was so inviting, so welcoming, so nurturing, so just, like that mother that just, come on in here, get you something to eat, or wash your hands, or roll up your sleeve, help me knead this dough, very, very welcoming, which is so fitting of God, right? Okay, here we go. In an old abandoned shack in the outback of the Oregon Mountains, Mackenzie Allen Phillips is shocked by 3 unusual characters. It is supposed to be a showdown with God in the place of his nightmares, the very place where his Missy was murdered. But the 3 people he meets: a large African American woman with beaming eyes, a strong carpenter of Middle Eastern descent, and an Asian looking woman who appears and disappears at will, are nothing like the God Mac imagined he would meet. In fact, the God he imagined is a no show. In all, Mac makes 4 trips to the shack. The first is the terrible night when the authorities find fragments of Missy's red dress and blood on the wooden floor. The second, several years later, is when Mac answers an invitation from Papa, his wife's favorite name for God. Mac has mixed emotions, to be sure. He is a little intrigued, a little scared, and a lot angry. He borrows his friend's Jeep and heads out, knowing that he is driving, quote unquote, into the center of his pain. After several hours of driving, Mac parks the Jeep a mile or so from the shack. But he can only take 5 steps before the knot in his gut makes him panic. Please help me, he cries out, but there's no answer. At length, he manages to follow the treacherous trail until he sees the shack. The shack itself looked dead and empty, but as he stared, it seemed for a moment to transform into an evil face, twisted in some demonic grimace, looking straight back at him and daring him to approach. The fact that Mackenzie takes another step toward the shack is a lesson in courage or anger. He has a lot to talk to God about. Standing at the door, his mind flashes back to that terrible night, his emotions in turmoil. He calls out to God, but as before, there is no answer. Then again, he calls, and again, there is no answer. Courageously facing his fear of what may be inside, Mac opens the door. And that's just it. There's nothing inside. No God, no life, just emptiness, shadows, the barren nothingness of the God of all fears, and the bloodstains of his Missy. Mac's God, the God of our fallen imaginations, is not real, never has been, and never will be. But the trauma this God inflicts is real to us, in Mac's mind. This is a brilliant move on Jung's part. Without a single theological word, he has ripped open the tragedy of Western theology and made us feel it. At this moment in the book, And hopefully, at this point in history, the sterility of that imaginary God is exposed for all to see. To be sure, Mac's great sadness is rooted in the horrible loss of Missy, but it's also rooted in the terrible absence of God. That is a lonely place. Inside, alone and helpless, Mac explodes with pain. Why? Why did you let this happen? And why did you bring me here? Of all of the places to meet you, why here? Wasn't it enough to kill my baby? Do you have to toy with me too? In a fit of rage, he all but destroys the room, exhausting himself as he throws a chair and beats the floor with one of its broken legs. And then his pain, his anger, his wrath at God are funneled into three screaming words: I hate you. It is the scream of honesty, the only real response when our pain and the cold, heartless impotence of this God collide in real life tragedy. I hate you. He slumps down in tears, engulfed in his great sadness, once again taking aim at the indifferent God he imagined. He shouts sarcastically, so where are you? I thought you wanted to meet me here. Well, I'm here, God. And you? You're nowhere to be found. You've never been around when I've needed you. Not when I was a little boy, not when I lost Missy, not now. Some papa you are. I'm done, God. I can't do this anymore. I'm tired of trying to find you in all of this. I hate you. The last word of the human race, trapped in the great sadness. But such awful desolation is not the end of the story. For the lover of our souls meets us in our pain. This too is a brilliant move to my mind, and one of the great themes running throughout the shack. Unlike the indifferent God of our imaginations, the Father, Son, and Spirit do in fact meet us in our pain, in our tragedy, and especially in our darkness and sin. It is not so much, as we will see, that the blessed Trinity is absent to the rest of our lives. It is that in the trauma created by the collision of life and the false God of our imaginations, we begin to get new eyes. That's good. Having screamed his final word, rejecting God, Mackenzie leaves the shack and heads back to the Jeep. It is then, after he has spoken his piece with God, that the world changes, his world, and hopefully ours. 30 or so yards toward the Jeep, the woods come alive with light. A bizarre life shines in the stillness of Mac's disguise or disgust. A month of spring thaw unfolds in a few short moments. New hope emerges as the snow melts around him and the flowers unveil their glory. Intrigued yet cautious, he makes the decision to go back to the shack. But it too has changed. No longer a dilapidated shack, it is now a finely built log cabin with a white picket fence and smoke winding from the chimney. He thinks he can hear laughter. Mac has no idea what lies before him, but it is not to be missed that his first hint was laughter. But how is a man supposed to believe such a miracle? Half convinced that he has lost his mind, Mackenzie doesn't know what to think or what to do. But it's too late. Standing on the porch trying to decide if he should knock, Mac, like the prodigal son, never gets a chance to say a word. The door flies open. A large African American woman whose face beams with life and love itself runs to embrace him, lifting Mackenzie off the ground in joy while shouting his name as if she has known and loved him all his life. Mac is stunned silent, clueless as to who this woman is, but finding his soul drinking in every ounce of the moment. Who doesn't want to be embraced? Who doesn't want to be called by name by someone smiling with delight? His defenses are up, to be sure, but his heart is helplessly melting, shocked but delighted, bewildered yet moved to tears. He loves the way she shouts his name. Mac, look at you, she fairly exploded. Here you are, so grown up. I have really been looking forward to seeing you face to face. My, how I do love you. And with that, she wrapped herself around him again. You can see the wheels turning in Mac's mind. Who is this woman? And why is she here? How does she know me? And why does she care? What on earth is going on? But he hardly has time to process what is happening before an Asian looking woman, whom he can barely see, invades his space, brushing his cheek. As best he can tell, she is dressed something like a gardener, but she is almost invisible, shimmering in light. I collect tears, she said. Then Mac notices a Middle Eastern man leaning against the door jamb. He is rather ordinary looking, but strong, and his smile somehow speaks volumes. Mac knew instantly that he liked him. Covered in sawdust with a tool belt around his waist, he looks like he might be a carpenter. Overwhelmed, Mac tries to steady himself, asking somewhat humorously, Are there more of you? No, Mackenzie, chuckled the black woman. We is all that you get, and believe me, we're more than enough. Less than 30 minutes ago, Mac was fuming at God, screaming out, I'm done. I hate you, as his final verdict. Now he finds himself in the astonishing embrace of a black woman who obviously knows him and loves him. Mackenzie has no clue what to do or say. Even though he is still hurting, still stewing in anger at the God of his imagination, Max stands surrounded by two beautiful women and a carpenter, the three of whom somehow know him and accept him, even like him, just as he is. He feels strangely at home. He feels noticed and known, cared for, even wanted, and certainly welcomed. Then he catches the unmistakable whiff of his own mother's perfume coming from the black woman. Still guarded, and who wouldn't be? He feels tears welling up in his eyes. And so Mackenzie Allen Phillips unexpectedly finds himself included in a fellowship of love. In a few short hours, he will marvel at their relationship, at their other centeredness. Oh, I love that, other centeredness instead of self centeredness, other centeredness. That's amazing. Oh, I love that so much. Mutual respect and delight, and the way they accepted him as he is. Little does he know that this gentle acceptance will transform him from the inside out. In many ways, the whole story of the shack is crammed into this scene, as are some rather large theological issues. It's a picture that stirs longed for hope within us and begs a thousand questions, from the character of God to the fact that Mac was included before he repented and believed. Yes, exactly. From the purpose of the incarnation of the meaning of Jesus' death, from what it means to be human to the real meaning of heaven and hell. And we will get to these in due course. But first, a simple question. What if this moment, this scene of Papa's embrace, is what happens to us when we die? Man, I thought that too. Oh, I thought that too. What if we wake up on the other side hearing Papa shout our name, surrounded by Sarah you collecting our tears, and Jesus covered in sawdust from the coffin for our great sadness? Let me go a little further. What if it's already true now? What if we are already so known and loved and welcomed now? Lesson one of the story is that we are Mackenzie. The astonishing embrace enfolding him is the truth about us. We are known, loved, and delighted in by the Father, Son, and Spirit, just as we are, whether we believe in God or not. The truth is, we have already been embraced by Jesus' Papa and by the Spirit. That is what the coming of Jesus was all about. The blessed Trinity has already met us in our shacks. In Jesus, they have pitched their tents inside our garbage cans. We belong to the Father, Son, and Spirit. We always have and always will. Jesus has seen to that personally. But like Mackenzie, we have wrong eyes. There is so much hurt. We cannot possibly know the truth or believe it yet. But so it is. Oh, that's so good. Oh, that is so true. All of these questions. I'm so glad that we're all, and I'm quite sure that everybody who read The Shack had these same burning questions like, oh my goodness, is this what it's like? Okay, here we go. Wait, let me check and see. Let me see if anybody's speaking on the other side. Okay, making sure I don't want to forget anybody or overlook, your thoughts. Chapter 2, The Dancing God. A quote from Papa. I'm not who you think I am, Mackenzie. Hmm. One reviewer of The Shack wrote of meeting critics who were deeply disturbed by Jung's daring portrayal of the Trinity as eccentric personalities with offbeat ways of communicating their message. These critics accuse him of blasphemy, labeling Jung a postmodernist for whom truth meant nothing. Then the reviewer wrote, I can admit to a sense of shock when I realized in the course of reading that Jung had chosen to portray God our Father as an absolutely enchanting, powerfully mothering African American woman. But I will also admit that it wasn't too long in my reading before I found myself wanting to sit at her kitchen table and to enjoy her cooking, her conversation, and her maternal affection. The beauty of the fellowship generated by her presence was what many of us have sought for a lifetime and so rarely experienced. My goodness, isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? This is beautifully stated, and it gets to the heart of the question Young's Papa raises, that Young's Papa raises for all of us. Who doesn't want to be so loved, so known, so accepted? Who doesn't want to sit at Papa's table and enjoy her cooking and delight? But on what basis could we be so bold as even to dream of such a thing? We're talking about God here. Remember the ultimate one? Yet, as my friend Ken Courtney asks, that's what we want, isn't it? We will come back to our desire to be known and accepted in a moment, but first we must meet with another question. Does this absolutely enchanting, powerfully mothering African American woman say anything to us about the real God? Can we dare believe that Jesus' father is as good as this Papa? My answer is simply, of course. The picture of the Father's heart painted by Jung is straight from Jesus himself. This heart overflowing with love and delight is not a fantasy of Paul Jung. This is the ancient love that fired off the universe. This is the untarnished truth. If anything, the enchanting love and sheer goodness of Papa's heart, beautiful as they are, nevertheless pale in comparison to Jesus' portrayal of his father in his most famous parable. The background of this parable is the critique of Jesus by the religious leaders called the Pharisees. They don't like Jesus. His freedom to be with broken people is disturbing, if not embarrassing. He doesn't play by their rules, and the broken people are listening intently to what he has to say. And get this, the broken people are the dreaded tax gatherers who were themselves Jewish but collected taxes from the Romans, often lining their own pockets through overtaxation. They were despised by the rest of the Jews. Of course, Jesus made one of them his disciple and later went out of his way to find Zacchaeus, a chief tax collector. When Jesus found him up in a tree, he said, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for today I must stay at your house. And then there were the sinners, the law breaking drunkards, the harlots, the conniving swindlers, those who shamed and beaten down, they wouldn't dare even look up at heaven. You have to appreciate the irony here. The ones who are lost are not the sinners who are listening to Jesus, but the religious people who have no problems at least in their own mind. I know that's right. Oh my goodness. So the Pharisees and the scribes are fuming at Jesus for allowing the likes of such folks to hang around. You can see their minds working. After all, he's making a pitch at being at least a great prophet, if not the Son of God himself. If anything, he should be holier than us. Yet there he is fraternizing with blasphemers and wine bibbers. Go figure. So they level what they believe will be an exposing accusation at Jesus. You can almost see it on Saturday Night Live, the robed religious elite having their secret whispering sessions, finally coming up with just the right damning allegation to throw the light on this charlatan. And then they practice their grimace of insolence, so their critique will drop off their noses with poignant contempt. What is their great criticism? Both the Pharisees and the scribes began to grumble, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." That's it. He receives sinners and eats with them. That was the sin. That was the thing that led him to being crucified. That's crazy. There is obvious disdain in their accusation. They don't even have the courtesy to speak his name, calling Jesus this man or this fellow. The problem is that to receive someone and share a meal with them in this culture is a sign of real solidarity. This is how you treat family. So Jesus is acting like he is family with the tax collectors and the sinners. The Pharisees are dumbfounded. How can he do this? He is supposed to represent God. Jesus has lost his mind. Okay, let me keep reading, because that's the very thing that I don't understand when it comes down to the system of religion anyway. My goodness. Oh my goodness, here we go. Jesus must have been a little stunned, if not angry, at the extraordinary blindness of this religious lot. Their accusation is loaded with a question. How do you, Jesus, a self-respecting rabbi with disciples, explain your bizarre relationships? These people deserve nothing but to be outcasts, forever shunned by God and his people. And here you are eating with them, declaring to the world they are family. What's crazy is, y'all, these are the very people that wrote the pages. Okay? My goodness, man. Oh, whew. My God. Which is why the image of God inside of the pages is so mean and striking people down and swallowing up the people and killing the folks. And that's why the God that they speak about is so, judgmental and all of this stuff, all angry and mean and killing and isolating and putting them over here and casting them out. That's why they're the God that is described in the Bible is in such a way, because the people who wrote about the God in the Bible is this way. Come on, man. Come on, man. You gotta know God for yourself. And in the shack, Mackenzie had a hard time receiving God, receiving Papa, and the love that Papa was trying to give to him, because Papa had to cut through the religious programming that he lived through all his life from the Bible. Oh my good. Okay, here we go. My Lord, this is good. They did not have baseball in those days, of course, but they did. But if they did, Jesus would have been a pitcher, for he loved throwing theological curveballs to the self-crowned religious elite. And he wasn't shy about firing a blazing inside fastball to back them off the plate and get their attention. That's it. He responds with 3 stories. And if you think Paul Young's Papa is shocking, just wait till you hear what Jesus tells the Pharisees about his father. The sinners sitting at Jesus' feet could hardly wait for what was about to happen. But you've got to admire the Pharisees' self confidence. They have picked a fight with Jesus. It is carefully calculated, and in their minds, there is no way that Jesus can escape without embarrassment. So Jesus faces them with his own questions. Here's my loose paraphrase of Luke 15. Which of you would not go after one of your own sheep if you discovered that it was lost? And when you found it, which of you would not invite your friends and neighbors to celebrate its safe return? I didn't think so. So hear me, I tell you, that's the way it is in heaven. In fact, there will be more joy over one sinner who gets the truth about my Father than over 99 religious persons who think they don't need help. Or what woman here, if she loses one of her 10 coins, would not light a lamp and search carefully until she finds it? Note the search carefully part. And when she finds it, who among you would not call your friends and neighbors to rejoice with you? I didn't think so. So hear me. I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who gets the truth about my Father. Here's another story. A father had two sons. He loved them both. One got it into his head that he wanted to see the world. The other kept his list of do's and don'ts. The father divided his wealth between them. The younger son blazed a trail to the far country, squandering his money on wine, loose women, and riotous living. He humiliated his father and embarrassed his family with his feral ways. The whole town knew. The whispers were everywhere. When the money ran out, the boy began to starve, reduced to pilfering food that he was feeding to pigs, an utter horror for a Jewish person. He remembered that the servants of his father ate quite well. So he decided to go home. And knowing that he had proved himself unworthy of his father's love, he would pitch a plea for a job and some food as a servant. So he headed home. But his father saw him when he was but a speck on the horizon. His heart filled with joy. The father ran out, embraced his son, and kissed him again and again, foul stench and all. Then he shouted to his servants, "Quick, get my best robe and put it on him, and get the family ring and put it on his finger, and new sandals for his feet, and bring out the prize calf, and let's have a party, for my son was lost and has come home." Then I suspect there was a long pause as Jesus let the shocking, almost unbelievable story sink in. Then he looked to the broken people with an assuring smile and a nod, and then he stared at the Pharisees. This is what my Papa is like. This is why I am here, and this is why I receive sinners and share meals with them. They belong to my Father. He loves them forever. They are family, just like the sheep belong to the shepherd, and the coin belonged to the woman, and the two boys belong to their father. You belong to my Father. But the story is not over. You see, the older son, list in hand, was in the fields carrying out his duties. He heard the music and dancing and called one of the servants for an explanation. "Your brother has come home. Your father's commanded a feast." When the older son heard of the father and his party, he stalked off fuming, fit to be tied. The family himself came out. The father himself came out looking for him, doing his best to convince him to join the party. Then the son shouted, "Look here, I have never once disobeyed you, and you have never once given me a prize goat for a party for my friends. But when this whoremongering son of yours straggles in from the wine country, you embarrass yourself running down the streets and receive him back. I even heard you kiss the swine smelling derelict. That is not fair." Grieved and bewildered, the father looked his son in the eyes. "My child, you have always been here with me, and I've already given you everything that I have. How could we not rejoice over your brother? For he was dead and now has begun to live. He was lost in life in my house, but now he has been found." We are not told what happened when Jesus finished telling these stories, But surely the broken people cheered and then cried in their shocked hope. They had never heard of a father like this. They identified with the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the younger brother. And Jesus was telling him that they were accepted and loved by his father, just like his Jewish patriarch loved his broken son. Like the shepherd, Jesus' Abba has come after his lost sheep. Like the woman, Jesus' Papa has scoured the house of his universe to find his lost coin. And like his Jewish father, Jesus' Abba has embraced and kissed us in our shame and commanded a feast in his joy. So, what's the real difference between an African American woman embracing a broken, angry white man and a Jewish father embracing his wayward son? Both are stunning pictures of the truth. Paul Young is not saying that God is a black woman any more than Jesus is saying that God is a Jewish patriarch. But both are using a shocking story to help us know the real truth about Jesus' father and the truth about who we are. And what of the older brothers of the world, the Pharisees who create their own religious way to God, makes lists and keep them perfectly? I suspect that Jesus told these stories primarily for the Pharisees. That is why the older brother's story comes last. Jesus knows his papa is especially fond of them too. They belong, just as the tax gatherers and sinners do. In fact, the story and the father embrace this older son in his religious pride, entreating him in the power of the Spirit to join the party. I wonder if the Pharisees got it. I wonder if they saw themselves in the older brother. Jesus is the Father's arm, embracing all of us, including them. He is the Father's heart, entreating the religious among us to put the ledger down and to learn from him about his Father's heart. He is the wealth divided between them. Like Mackenzie, who has more in common with the Pharisees than he does the wayward son, the Pharisees too were already and are already loved and included. That's so good. Oh, that's so good. It was the Pharisees that put themselves separate, just like it was the oldest son that separated himself from the family. You know what I'm saying? He was still a part of the family. It's how he saw himself, as inferior. It was no one made him inferior. He saw himself as inferior and then projected that self and analysis onto others and made it their fault. You see what I'm saying? Same thing with the Pharisees. They saw themselves as inferior to Jesus. And instead of joining the party and learning what he was teaching, they projected their stuff onto him and the people, which led to his crucifixion. That is wild. That's wild. And unfortunately, we see a lot of that today. Because you see yourself less than, you want to make your image of yourself that you believe, that you subscribe to. No one told you to believe that. But because you believe that about yourself and see that within yourself, you want to make it. I feel this because you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be feeling. Chapter 3, Light from Lewis. An excerpt from the shack. Sarayu began humming the same evocative tune he'd heard earlier. The melody stirred Mac deep inside, knocking again at the door. As you have probably gathered by now, I suspect that the fingerprints of C.S. Lewis are all over the shack. And nowhere more so than in the riveting scene when Papa runs across the porch and lifts Mackenzie off the ground with a hug as wide as the universe. Such a scene is born from a long and brutal journey, winding through great hurt into the discovery of the love of the Father, Son, and Spirit, and the freedom to be. Mm, the freedom to be, just to simply be. Both Young and Lewis write as grown men who have learned to play again. They write, as someone said to Lewis about his writing, as though you enjoyed it. That's good. I've listened to Paul share his story for hours and hours in three different countries. He is always the same. His voice sounds like a blend of the voices of Kevin Costner and Tom Hanks. And he grins like Donald Sutherland, as if he knows something that you don't, but are about to. And he will enjoy every minute of your awakening. What Paul knows is that Papa is good and that you are accepted as you are. And he knows that you believe that you are not. For me, Paul's voice, his grin, his eyes anticipating your surprise, all come together when Papa shouts, Mackenzie Allen Phillips on the front porch. That's good. I believe that too. Within us all, there lies a broken dream, our inconsolable secret, as Lewis calls it, that is so precious to us, we protect it with 1,000 defenses. The secret which hurts so much, Lewis says, that you take your revenge on it by calling it names like nostalgia and romanticism and adolescence. We know that we are made for glory, but we've already known hints of its joy. In the midst of life, we long for more. Something is missing. Creation is aflame with a glory we cannot touch, but we know it's ours. We are moved by ancient music, but cannot find the great dance. So we pine, as Lewis says. But such pining is too much to bear. So we bury our longing and protect our dreams asleep. Back in my college days at Ole Miss, I once bumped into Miss Mississippi. I had met her several times, so we greeted one another. It was around homecoming, so as we talked, I asked her several times. Wait, so I asked her who she had a date with for the big weekend. She paused for a moment and then said, Baxter, I don't have a date. In fact, no one ever asked me out. I was shocked. How in the world do you not have a date? I would have thought your phone never stops ringing. I don't know, she said. No one calls me. Every now and then I think about how odd it was that the reigning Miss Mississippi hardly ever had a date. One day it dawned on me. There is a huge risk in picking up the phone and asking someone like her for an evening out. Rarely does a no feel good, even a polite one. But somehow it seems to hurt more if the no comes from someone of standing. Perhaps it's better not to run the risk and just settle for something else. My goodness. Ooh, 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 I hope y'all got that. What if the grand promises of the New Testament of abounding life, of the river of living water, of love, of a kingdom of righteousness, joy, and peace in the Holy Spirit turn out to be a sham, a terrible trick of the gods? What if we find a closed door at the end of our longing? What if we hear that dreaded and shattering no? What if at last we miss the great dance altogether? Better not to listen for the music. Better to put the phone down. Better to bury the dream. In this world, it is best to keep such romanticism at bay. Grow up, we say to ourselves. Put such silliness aside and just get on with it. Right, get over it. Perhaps it's better to compromise with our hearts and live a half life than to risk the prospect of such a bitter disappointment. But then we hear a rumor in the wind, a line from a song. We see a smile or a sunset, or we read the scene of Papa shouting Mackenzie's name, or hear the haunting tune of Sarayu, and our insides tremble with hope. Our dream is awakened. Such is the burden of being alive. How could we dare run the risk? There is no pain more bitter than the death of a deep dream, and no dread as terrible as its awakening without hope. But what if Papa is real? What if Jesus is passionate that we know his Father with him? What if the Holy Spirit is determined that we live in the freedom of Papa's embrace? Lewis was a rare academic who harnessed his great mind in the service of his heart's pain until he was at last surprised by joy. As such, his writings sing the song of the longing heart. He knows about our dream and he knows the truth. He was aware of almost committing an indecency in bringing up an inconsolable secret. But how can a man who has met Jesus's Papa, be silent? As a boy in Ireland, Lewis was smitten by an encounter too beautiful for words. It was only a fleeting moment, but it was real. And in a certain sense, he says, everything else that had ever happened to me was insignificant in comparison. Thankfully, he could never let it go. And his whole life became a long quest to discover what that encounter and others like it in his youth were all about. He came to call them stabs of joy. A stab because it hurt, and joy because even the pain of the stab was better than anything else in life. But what was it that Lewis encountered? What were the stabs of joy? What is our inconsolable secret? What exactly is our dream all about? It has to do with Papa's smile, and Lewis has written beautifully about it. In his famous sermon, now an essay published separately as The Weight of Glory, one of the finest sermons ever penned, you can find three profound insights into our inconsolable dream. The first we might call the desire to be baptized. I don't mean baptism in the sense of water or the church sacrament. I mean baptism in the sense of being immersed in something to the point of being utterly filled with it. Lewis is writing about beauty, the simple pleasure of seeing something beautiful, and about how in seeing it, we want more. And this wanting more is surely part of what awakens in our hearts as we read about Papa's embrace. We don't want merely to see beauty though. God knows even that is bounty enough. We want something else which can hardly be put into words, to be united with the beauty we see, to pass into it, to receive it into ourselves, to bathe in it, to become part of it. That is why we have peopled air and earth and water with gods and goddesses and nymphs and elves, that though we cannot, yet these projections can enjoy in themselves that beauty, grace, and power of which nature is the image. That is why the poets tell us such lovely falsehoods. They talk as if the west wind could really sweep into a human soul, but it can't. They tell us that beauty born of murmuring sound will pass into a human face, but it won't. I think I've read this paragraph 100 times over the years. It never ceases to amaze me. There is so much here. Notice the words to be united with beauty we see, to pass into it, to receive it into ourselves, to bathe in it, to become part of it. And I wonder if Lewis is right when he suggests that our fairy tales are really about this deep dream, that they are the projections of our longing hearts. Longing is not so much about beauty as it is about being filled, baptized, but filled with what? In Mere Christianity, Lewis notes the biblical distinction between bios and zoe. Although both words are translated as life in our English Bibles, they mean two different things. Lewis says that human beings in their natural condition from their mother's womb have bios, which is biological life, but not zoe or spiritual life. The difference between the two, Lewis says, is like the difference between a photograph and a real place, a statue and a real man. Ooh, that's good. We could say it is the difference between broken, sad, and angry Mackenzie and the Mackenzie embraced and delighted in by the Papa, Jesus, and Sarayu. This world is a great sculptor's shop, writes Lewis. We are the statues, and there is a rumor going around the shop that some of us are someday going to come to life. The feeling we long for is a feeling with a real spiritual life, not bios, but Zoe. But what is this spiritual life? What is Zoe? Second aspect of longing Lewis writes about is the weight of glory has to do with, in the weight of glory has to do with reunion. It is a longing to be reunited with something in the universe from which we now feel cut off and to be acknowledged, to meet with some response. Here, Lewis shifts from the abstract to the personal and relational, from discussions of feeling and fullness and life to being noticed, heard, and known, to fellowship. But there's yet a third dimension, for it is not merely fellowship for which we long, but fellowship of a certain kind. In the essay, Lewis talks about glory in terms of fame, not the fame of Hollywood, not fame, Lewis says, conferred by our fellow creatures, but fame of much more profound nature, fame with God, approval, or I might say appreciation by God. He elaborates. Nothing is so obvious in a child, not in a conceited child, but in a good child, as its great and undisguised pleasure in being praised. To be pleased, no, to please God, to be a real ingredient in the divine happiness, to be loved by God, not merely pitied, but delighted in as an artist delights in his work or a father in his son. It seems impossible, a weight or burden of glory which our thoughts can hardly sustain. But so it is. Lewis moves from longing as the desire to be filled or baptized to the desire to be reunited, reconnected, and known, fellowship, and now to the desire to be a thrill to the heart of God. It is when you combine these three that you come very close, not only to the soul of the universe, but also to naming our own inconsolable secret. When Papa embraces Mackenzie, our inner world leaps with hope that it could be so for us. What we want is to see Papa smile at us. We want to be delighted to the Father's heart and to be so filled with his pleasure that our whole being dances in it. And that brings us within a hair's breadth of the blessed Trinity and the great dance of the triune God, not to mention the stunning dream of the blessed Trinity for the human race. Lewis was shocked at this. He said it never crossed his mind that what he longed for was God. No slightest hint was vouchsafed, vouchsafed me that there ever had been or ever would be any connection between God and joy. But gradually it began to dawn on him that behind the whole universe was something vast and deep and ancient and beautiful and very alive. And that, by the way, is perhaps the most important difference between Christianity and all other religions. That in Christianity, God is not a static thing, not even a person, but a dynamic, pulsating activity, a life, almost a kind of drama, almost, if you will not think me irreverent, a kind of dance. Behind Lewis's longing and ours is the first dance, the original dance, the fellowship of the Father, Son, and Spirit. This fellowship is not boring, joyless, sad, or empty, and certainly not religious. This is a living fellowship of passion and delight and love, of creativity and music and joy, of glory and oneness and life. Zoe. The secret longing of our souls is to be taken into this circle and given a place in it, to pass into it, to bathe in it, and be filled with this life, to be noticed and known and embraced, to share in the very delight and pleasure that the Father has for his beloved Son, to share in their joy together in the Spirit, and to live in its freedom. As Lewis says, the whole dance or drama or pattern of this three personal life is to be played out in each one of us. Such a thought is almost unbelievable, but I think it is tucked away within us and wrapped up in a box labeled too risky. Such a longing is too much to bear. What could be more painful than to hope for such a dream and then miss it? And who among us actually believes that we could possibly be a real ingredient in the divine happiness? Why would God smile at us? So we bury our dream and move on with life. Then we read of Papa's shout, full of such passion and love and delight, and the dream is awakened. It hurts to hope that it could be so, but what if it is already true? That's so good. Ooh, he spoke beautifully about the love that God has for us, the deliberate, intentional, full embrace love, how God sees us, how God hears us, how God knows us, how God longs for us, is fond of us, is proud of us, even in our stuff, y'all. But oftentimes, because we don't see ourselves in that light, we deny ourselves the real, true Zoe of God. Dang. And we pass verdict on our own selves. Well, man, God ain't fooling with me. God don't even, I've done too much wrong, and God ain't trying to bless me. God ain't trying. We do that, y'all. We do that. Oh my goodness. Whew. Chapter 4. What's in a name? A quote from Papa. Nobody knows what horrors I have saved the world from, because people can't see what never happened. Only the Lord knows how a boy from South Mississippi could be a diehard Minnesota Vikings fan, but I was. And my mom and dad gave me the unheard of present of going to New Orleans to see my beloved Vikings play in person against the Saints, known in those days as the Aints. Blessedly, times have changed. The 3 hours it took to drive to New Orleans seemed to me an eternal day. But we finally got there, and my dad parked the car. We took a trolley to the old Tulane Stadium. It was a magnificent afternoon, and the game was everything I had dreamed it would be, including a decisive Viking victory. After the game, we were walking down the exit ramp when I looked over the rail and saw three buses lined up, and I recognized the huge men hoarding the buses as the Viking players themselves. Without thinking, I ran down the ramp and somehow made my way to the players. I actually shook hands with Carl Eller and was inches away from Alan Page and Wally Hilgenberg, and Coach Bud Grant himself stood not 5 feet from me. As he leaned over to sign an autograph, his hat fell off, and I got to pick it up and gave it back to him. Needless to say, I was in heaven. Then, one by one, the buses began to drive away. I remember watching them go beside the stadium and turn left out of sight. When the last bus was gone, the greatest of all fears seized my little heart. I suddenly realized that I had no idea where my parents were, and worse, that they had no idea where I was. I looked around and there was not another person in sight, not one. To this day, it is a mystery how the crowd around those buses disappeared so quickly that, but they did. There was not one single human being to be found. Sheer panic gripped me. Within seconds, I was scared out of my mind. I did not have a clue what to do. My heart was racing so fast, I could not even think. 12 years old, New Orleans, Tulane Stadium, and it was getting dark. I was a long way from being street smart, but I knew to the roots of my soul that I was in trouble. At some point, it dawned on me to find a policeman, but there were none. I could not find another person, let alone a policeman, and I walked around that entire stadium at least 3 times. By this time, I was frantic and crying my eyes out. There were plenty of houses around, but I was not about to go to one for help. The only thing I knew to do was to try to find my way back to the car. I thought of the trolley that we had taken to the stadium, but which one? North and south were meaningless to me on the streets of New Orleans, and I had no idea which direction to go anywhere. I did not even remember any street names, but I had some money in my pocket. So I found a trolley car and I got on and told the driver that I was lost. He told me to get in the back of the trolley and keep my eyes peeled, and if I saw anything, to pull the cable and he would stop. As the trolley made its way around New Orleans, I jumped from one side to the other, pressing my face against the cold windows, hoping, just hoping, that I would see something that I recognized: a tree, a building, a street, a parked car, who knows, maybe even my parents. But it did not happen. I rode that trolley all the way back to the stadium. Son, the driver said, we have made the circuit. What do you want to do? Not knowing what else to do, I got off and walked around the stadium all the way back to where the buses had been. Alone and scared to death, I sat down under an oak tree in a pile of leaves. I remember fiddling with a stick and crying, but there were no more tears. It was pitiful. But things got worse. As I sat there, my 12 years of life flashing before my eyes, the stadium lights suddenly went off. I have never experienced darkness like that. Nearly 40 years later, I can still see the darting, haunting shadows of that place and still smell the concrete and hear the leaves rustling in the cold. I don't know how long I sat there, but it seemed like hours, certainly longer than the eternal ride to the stadium. It was so dark. I was so alone and cold. And then suddenly, the stadium lights came on, and before I knew what was going on, I was on my feet, running around the stadium. Someone had to have turned the lights on, and I was determined with the fire of the universe to find them. And then it happened. Over the noise of my footsteps and the pounding of my fears, I heard the most blessed sound in all of New Orleans. It was the most blessed sound I could ever hear in my life. One word: Baxter, shouted by my father. No one had to tell me what to do. No one had to tell me what that word meant. No one had to tell me how to apply the word to my life. My name, shouted by my father, spoke the hope of 1,000 volumes. The overwhelming fear, the frantic searching, the anxiety, all took a left turn like the buses and were gone. And in their place arose the simplest and most wonderful of all things: security, assurance, rest. Had no way of knowing it at the time, but I was being given a world class education on how to live life. It would be years before I had begun to understand the significance of what happened. The story is a living parable with two simple points. First, it's not just about a young boy lost in New Orleans, desperately searching for his family. It's about us, the human race. We are on the trolley car. It is a streetcar named Scared to Death. But who can admit it? We don't know who we are or why we are here and what's going on to happen next. It's a fearful world, and we are trapped on the streetcar going in circles. Again and again, we hear, son, we have made the circuit. What do you want to do? Some of us have given up and gone to entertaining ourselves. Others sleep in one way or another. Some stay busy. Some pretend that all is well or that they have it all figured out. But when there is an odd sound, we all betray ourselves as we glance out the window, hoping to see something that will give us a hint of home, of hope, of peace. Second, my trauma in New Orleans is a dramatic picture of the truth that life is all about hearing Papa shout our name. It is truly no more complicated than that. When we hear Jesus's Abba shout our name, it baptizes our inner worlds with unearthly assurance. In the New Testament, this unearthly assurance is called parousia. Parasia, confidence, freedom, boldness, assurance. We are so made as to live our lives baptized, immersed in such assurance. That is how we are wired. We have been designed, so to speak, to hear Jesus's Papa, to hear the Almighty. And when we do, peace happens. Assurance settles our souls. Unexpected joy fills the room of our broken lives. We see with new eyes and we see glory everywhere. I've heard a year's worth of sermons on the will of God and some shame filled ones on settling for God's second best. I believe the will of Father, Son, Spirit for us is that we would know what Jesus knows, that we would see what Jesus sees, and that we would experience what Jesus experiences when he looks his Father in the face. Think of what Jesus feels when he looks into his Father's eyes and hears, "You are my beloved Son, in whom my soul delights." I dare say it's not sadness or fear, not anxiety, dread, or hopelessness. I think Jesus' soul is baptized with unearthly assurance, with a freedom and confidence and hope that are born in his Father's heart. Jesus gets to live life in the joy of that baptism, in the freedom of the Spirit. The dream of the blessed Trinity is that we will too. We will get to be mothers and fathers, friends and neighbors, golfers, poets and gardeners, ditch diggers and teachers in the assurance of Papa's voice, of what we call heaven, of Zoe. I love the scene in the shack when Papa says to Mackenzie, "Just follow my voice." It is no more complicated than that. But oh Lord, there are so many voices. Jesus' Papa loves us forever and shouts our name with a smiling face. But we have weird ears. There are childhood wounds, the voices of our disappointed parents, the sermons on the angry God, the constant whisper, "I'm not worthy, I'm not important, not lovable, not good enough, not okay." There are divorces and financial crises, abuses and betrayal of friends, overwhelming losses, all conspiring together to drown out Jesus's Father's voice. My goodness, that is so true. As you read this, I want you to find a mirror and stand in front of it. I want you to stare yourself in the face, look yourself in the eyes, and as you do, I want you to say these words out loud. "I am good." Then say them again. "I am good." And then the third time, "I am good." Why is it so hard to say, "I am good"? Is it because we have reached another conclusion about ourselves, a conclusion based on real life experiences? Is it because of what we have been taught in church? But perhaps we have a definition of goodness that clearly excludes us. Perhaps we have crowned ourselves as the ultimate judge of goodness. Come on. The truth is that Jesus has crossed all worlds to find us. He became what we are, entered into our world of confusion, and boarded the trolley car. He found his way into our darkness, into the scary places inside our souls. And there he pitched his tent forever. And he brought his Papa and the Holy Spirit with him. We can't say, "I am good," because we don't know who we are and what glory lives within us. For inside of us all, because of Jesus, is nothing short of the very Trinitarian life of God, with all of its goodness and beauty, its righteousness and holiness, its joy unspeakable, its love and laughter. I am good because Jesus and his Father and the Holy Spirit have found me and live in me. Yes. What will happen when the great dance of Trinitarian life and love and freedom, when that beauty and goodness and righteousness of the Father, Son, and Spirit already within us gets loose, so to speak, to run rampant in our lives and relationships, in our work and play? What is keeping it from happening? What is in the way? What do we bring into the equation of the Trinitarian life that is being shared with us in every moment? What keeps us from believing Papa's shout? It is simple, but not easy. Like Mackenzie, we are not neutral. We bring a loud rubbish to the kitchen conversation. Mm-mm-mm. That's it right there. My goodness. My goodness. Ooh, that's so good. Listen, I say this often when I say everything that I say, no, I say there is no such thing as a problem. There's no such thing as a problem, right? The only thing, the only real problem that we have is the fact that we do not know who we are. We don't know who we are. We don't know what we are, who we are, how we are, where we are, why we are. We don't know. We are unfamiliar with us. And then the moment that we reunite and reconnect with us, the true us, and all of the components therein, everything that we once saw as a problem will be an opportunity to demonstrate that which we are, what we are, who we are. We can only do that when we find ourselves and find our place and see ourselves through the lens of God, the Almighty, infinite intelligence. Mm, 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 mm. This is outstanding. I love this for my Christmas Eve. I hope you are loving it for yours. Okay? And chapter 5, here we go. The Two Gods. A quote from George MacDonald, and it says, good souls, many will one day be horrified at the things they now believe of God. Man, isn't that the truth? My goodness. Here we go. What if instead of Papa, it was Mac's real dad who flung the door open and ran toward him, drunk again, stick in hand and eyes full of rage, ready for another round of beatings? Huckleberry Finn's dad was a drunk too, and mean as a snake. When Huck heard his dad calling his name, he ran for his life. For the one thing Mac and Huck knew was that their fathers were not for them. There was no baptism of unearthly assurance. There was a baptism of outright fear. Let me tell you something. I'm not even gonna lie to you. As I read that, because there's yeah, those words were far more potent to me than just black words on a white piece of paper. I didn't deal with the beatings, okay? But man, oh man, oh man, do I resonate with that right there. Okay, continuing. I once asked Paul about his favorite line in his book. He responded quickly. That's easy. Freedom is an incremental process. We want a quick fix, but that's not how it works. The freedom of living loved is not the sort of thing that happens overnight. Hearing Papa takes time. Hearing Papa takes time. We are all so wounded and blind. We bring a lot of baggage into our hearing. Life, history, wars and beatings, abusive parents, evil systems, and our own invisible world of assumptions and prejudices all work against us. Shouting that God is like Mac's real dad and Huck's. We could not possibly be. He could not possibly be for us. If God is not for us, we certainly don't want to hear him shouting our name. That's it right there. Come on now. It would take an entire weekend of love, acceptance, and conversation before Mac could begin to hear the truth. And for himself, for Paul himself, Mac's weekend at the shack represents more than a decade of his own life. Lewis's journey was much the same. He says that his imagination was baptized when he was reading one of George MacDonald's books, but that it took years before the baptism reached the rest of him. There's something deep within us that tells us it can't be so, that God cannot be for us. Even Missy, who called God Papa, like her mother, nevertheless thought that God was mean and wondered if she would have to die. Perhaps all this talk of the love of Papa is just romanticism. Yet, we know that God is good. Else, we would not care a whit about problems in life. Yep. They wouldn't be problems, really. That's so crazy that I talked about what we see as problems right before reading this chapter. Okay. They wouldn't be problems, really. They would just be life the way it is. But we know that it is not supposed to be this way. This is why tragedy is so tragic to us and hurts so brutally. We know that life is supposed to be good. We have heard the music. We have tasted of something beautiful, and somehow we know we belong to it. It is our own despair, our own frustration and pain that tells us we are made for peace. For how can you be homesick if you have no home? That's it. Ooh, my God. How can you despair if you don't know that you are meant for abounding life? Ooh, that is loaded. But that speaks of embracing both the light and the dark. Because how can you appreciate the light if you didn't first have to be in the dark? How can you know and appreciate peace when you when you have not been in chaos? Oh, oh my God. Listen, y'all. Oh my God. Okay, we are in two minds. Even Papa made Mackenzie nervous, and her offer to be the Papa had never had was at once inviting and at the same time repulsive. It all translates into a question of serious importance. Is God really for us? Note this depiction of Jesus' father. The bow of God's wrath is bent, and the arrow made ready on the string. And justice bends the arrow at your heart and strains the bow. And it is nothing but the mere pleasure of God, and that of an angry God without any promise or obligation at all, that keeps the arrow one moment from being made drunk with your blood. This image of Jesus' father is from Jonathan Edwards' famous sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Thankfully, this is not the full picture of Edwards' vision, but it is unfortunately the most famous sermon in American history. It makes sense to our broken, wounded minds. Exactly. Needless to say, it stands in dramatic contrast to Young's Papa and her determined love. Edward's God is full of wrath, bound by a law of abstract justice. We have failed. We deserve to suffer. God is angry. You wouldn't expect this God to say, I have really been looking forward to seeing you face to face. It is so wonderful to have you here with us. My, how I do love you. Exactly. Exactly. The anger of Edward's God, terrible as it is, may not be as bad as his arbitrariness. He is aloof. He has no obligation to his own creation. Love is not an essential part of his being. It's merely an option, right? He is not for us. And it is this divine ambivalence toward us that cautions our real hearing problems. Exactly. Why should he not let the arrows fly? Who wants to hear this God call our names? Who really wants to go to this God's heaven? Exactly. But in Young's Papa, there is no ambivalence at all. There's not a shred of indifference or neutrality. There is no maybe or perhaps or if then, right? If you do this, then you do that. Exactly. Young's Papa is for us, always has been, and always will be. She doesn't even have a quiver of arrows. Love is the core truth of her very being. I am love. The God who is, the I am who I am, cannot act apart from love. Ooh, yes, get that, y'all. So even when people say, oh, God gonna judge you, I welcome God's judgment. You know why? Because the God who is, the I am who I am, cannot act apart from love, because God is love. So if God judges me from what God is, then I love that for me. Okay? I would take that judgment all day long. It's better than some of y'all's judgment. Hello? Come on here. Ooh, y'all better talk about it. I love this. Most of us, like my kid, you know what? Before I even continue, I said to my mother a couple weeks ago, I said, I am inclined to believe that people who have been conditioned to religion, no matter what the faith is, right? People who have been conditioned and bound by religion, even I'm talking about 30, 40, 50, 60 years, 70 years, whatever, even those who teach it from the pulpits and from the podiums and things, I am inclined to believe that most have never, ever truly met God, like for themselves, like the real. Now, they have met, they have taught the God that the God of wrath, the God of vengeance, the God of, yeah, they know that one well. But unfortunately, the God that they teach and preach about, the God that's in that book, most times, most of those passages, is not who God is. It's who man has interpreted God to be. And on those pages is God according to Matthew, a God according to Mark, God according to David, God according to Solomon, God according to King James. Hello. Who also just so happened to be one of the captains of one of the first ships that carried over the African people. Okay. Okay. So the what we have met, who we have met as God, or who we were introduced to as God in that book, is God according to those people who wrote the book. So I'm wondering, did the authors, did they ever meet God? Did they ever really get to know who God was for themselves? What's crazy is, out of that very book, which is the greatest selling book of all time, best selling book ever to be written, best selling, is still it, like the God that's in that book, in accordance to those people, that's the one that's being taught widespread, and not the real I am. Mm-mm. We won't know that until we connect ourselves. Not in the book, not in pages. Mm-mm. In relationship. That's when you'll know. Okay, back to the book. Most of us, like Mackenzie, while wanting to believe, have too many shadows and 1,000 questions. What about wrath? What about holiness and judgment, faith and repentance, heaven and hell? God cannot simply love us because that's the way He is. Don't we have to do something in order to? My God, my God. Mac knew that what he was hearing, as hard as it was to understand, was something amazing and incredible. It was as if her words were wrapping themselves around him, embracing him, and speaking to him in ways beyond just what he could hear. Not that he actually believed any of it. If only it were true, his experience told him otherwise. As I read through The Shack, especially the conversations about goodness and love, I thought again and again of Athanasius, one of the early church heroes. Note what he says about Jesus' father. The God of all is good and supremely noble by nature. Therefore, he is the lover of humanity. As then the creatures whom he had created were in fact perishing, and such noble works were on the road to ruin. What then was God being good to do? Was he to let corruption and death have their way with them? In that case, what was the use of having made them in the beginning? It was impossible, therefore, that God should leave man to be carried off by corruption, because it would be unfitting and unworthy of himself. I first read Athanasius when I was a senior at Ole Miss, having followed up a footnote in C.S. Lewis's God in the Dock. As a son of the Bible Belt, I was shocked when I read the two statements quoted above and the many more I found like them. This Athanasius fellow, I thought to myself, writes as if the Father loves us passionately, as if he is for us, not against us. The God of Athanasius is all heart, intent on the single-minded purpose of blessing us beyond our wildest dreams. It's as though we are the reason for the whole creation, the apple of his eye. He has stunning dreams for us, and he won't let them go. The Father doesn't have to have his arm twisted by Jesus to love us or to forgive us. He is not distant, aloof, uncaring. He is thrilled with his creation and loves us all. For Athanasius, Jesus is the proof. This was a different world and a different God from that of the Calvinism of my youth. The sheer love of Athanasius' God captured my imagination. Far from being a stern judge, ever watching with his disapproving heart, or the faceless, nameless omni being, Jesus' Father is good, and therefore he is the lover of humanity. What then is this Father to do when his creation, when Mackenzie Allen Phillips, when you and I are trapped in such dastardly confusion on the road to ruin? Throw up his hands and scream at Jesus. I knew this would happen. I never should have let you talk me into such a stupid thing as creating human beings. You can go and fix it if you want, but know this, I don't care. Let them squirm and die in the miserable mess they have made. They have offended me. They make me sick. Where's my quiver? Hilarious. In Athanasius' view, it never crossed the Father's mind to go back on his lavish dreams for the human race. He is not fickle. He did not grudgingly grant us life only to watch for an excuse to abandon us. He is God. He is good and therefore loves us forever. Inconceivable as it may be to us, before the creation of the world, the Father, Son, and Spirit set their love upon us and dreamed of the day when we could be included in nothing less than the very life and goodness, the fellowship and joy, the unbridled delight that they share together from all eternity. As Papa says to Mackenzie, we created you to share in that. It was unworthy of the goodness of God that creatures made by him should be brought to nothing through the deceit wrought upon man by the devil. And it was supremely unfitting that the work of God in mankind should disappear. either through their own negligence or through the deceit of evil spirits. As then, the creatures whom he had created were in fact perishing, and such noble works were on the road to ruin. What then was God being good to do? When Adam fell, when he introduced independence and thus chaos, dying, misery, and death into the world of God's dreams for us, the response of the Father, Son, and Spirit was as simple as it was passionate. No, 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 not on our watch. Come on, Iyanla. Not on our watch. We did not create you to perish, to die, to live in such appalling pain and blindness and brokenness. We created you to share in our life, to taste and feel and know and experience what we have known from all eternity. Adam chose to go it on his own, as we knew he would, and everything got messed up. But instead of scraping the whole creation, he rolled up our sleeves and entered into the middle of the mess. That's what we have done in Jesus. Papa's unflinching heart reflects the passionate love of Athanasius, God, and putting the two in vivid contrast with Edward's God helps us see a confusion at work in our own hearts, or at least a duality. Ooh, that's good. That's a great way to see it. Like an overturned tackle box, the two pictures of God have left our beliefs in a tangled mess. How can we hear Jesus's Papa call our names and believe it when we do, when there are two different gods knocking around in our minds, two very different gods? It is, I fear, even more complicated than this. For our notions of God shape our understanding of why God created us, of who we are, and what happened in Adam and then in Jesus, and of the very nature of life, just to name a few. And there is another question lurking here. How have we developed our ideas about God? Who told us? Was it our parents, our church, a religious leader, the Bible, or are our ideas of God a compilation of various notions that just seem right to us? The ways of a man may seem right to him. Wow. Or do they arise from our wounds? Perhaps, like Max, our view of God is influenced by iconic figures such as Gandalf or Santa Claus. Or could our God be our own image writ large and projected into heaven, as Papa said to Mac? The problem is that many folks try to grasp some sense of who I am by taking the best version of themselves, projecting that to the ninth degree, factoring in all the goodness they can perceive, which often isn't much, and then call that God. And while it may seem like a noble effort, the truth is that it falls pitifully short of who I really am. I'm not merely the best version of you that you can think of. I am far more than that, above and beyond all that you can ask or think. Ooh, ooh, above all that you can ask or think is what God is. So, so why? Okay. Ooh, so many questions. Why are we making such definitive statements about God when God itself says, I am far more. I'm far more. I'm not merely the version of you that you can think of, because our brains are limited. It can only possess and perceive and receive but so much. But we feel that with our limited, because this human shell causes us limitations. But we really have, my God, with this limited understanding, we have really defined God so definitively, so matter of factly. When God's, infinite intelligence, the creator of all creations, heaven and earth and everything in between. There is no brain in a human that can truly process all that is God. And yet we teach it so definitively from our limited understanding and make it gospel truth. And then judge others and categorize others from that limited truth that we have penned in place in stone. My God, I am not merely the best version of you that you can think of. I am far more than that, above and beyond all that you can ask or think. For Mackenzie, hearing Papa was largely about the removal of his alien ideas. As Papa said in a simple but loaded statement, I am not who you think I am, Mackenzie. My God. Ooh, listen to the words. I'm not who you think I am. In order to think a thought, you got to process it through your brain. It's the mindset. Your limited mindset. I'm so loaded, y'all. I'm so full. This is good chewing on today. My God. I am not who you think I am. This is why it's so necessary to renew that mind. That's why, like with your phones, you got to update your operating system every now and again. Some of us, we're aging and getting older, but that mindset is still locked and loaded on yesterday's understanding. Every single day, there's a new revelation, a new understanding, a new. It's evolving, evolution every single day. Every single day, like the nature, like the earth, like the sun, like the moon, like the planets evolve, the stars move, earth changes seasons and things like that. And yet, for some reason, we want to hold on to old understandings. I am not who you think I am. That is the end of chapter 5. Y'all, jeez, man. Man, oh freaking man. Yikes, this was loaded down. That was all of part 2. So we completed part 1. Part 1 was the first 5 chapters. This was good. Yo, I'm about to go cook after this, and I'm just going to stand in silence and just allow all of this to just keep circulating and doing what it's doing in me, because it's doing a thing, it's doing it. Okay? It's doing the do in me, and I love it. Expand me, grow me, enlarge me, enhance me, elevate me, awaken me, align me. Ooh, listen, bro, I'm about to go. Okay, listen. Sunday is our session, our 5:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be coming together. We will be entering part 2. Part 2 is entitled Jesus, His Father, and the Holy Spirit. Okay, so that is likely to be another 5 chapters if they're breaking these parts in 5 chapters. I love this, man. Ooh, that's a lot of chew. That's a lot to chew on right there. If you are here now in real time, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. And I hope and pray that you get something. You've gotten some of the things out of this that man, I'm, ooh, I'm so full, yo. Oh my goodness, this is awesome. This is awesome. This is some good stuff here. Okay. Your fried turkey could never. Okay. I'm just saying. Your mama's dressing and macaroni and cheese could never. I'm telling you. My goodness, this is good. I thank you for being here. For those who will be listening and replaying and listening on the replay, I thank you. I trust and know that whenever you do get it, it is the perfect time of your receiving, that you get it on time. I'm grateful for you, both now in real time, whenever. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, we're airing live in several different platforms. This book, as with every book that we read, is available for you. Okay, if you want this free ebook copy, you can email me. Let me know. Let me know. You don't have to worry about, the cost of anything. It's already been covered for you. Email me at info@biancamissblee.com. Info@biancamissblee.com. Okay. Visit my website, you all, as well. Go to my website, see what I do, see who I am, see what you can take advantage of. Okay, merchandise, courses, classes. If you want me to speak at an event that you are having, hosting, virtually or in person, I'm available there too. Reach out, reach out, reach out. If you want therapy sessions, you want to become a client. 2025 is now open. The calendar for 2025 is now open. Okay, I'm so grateful to say I graduated 8 of my current clients. I graduated them out of my therapy journey, or their therapy journey, me guiding them in their therapy journey. I graduated them last week. I'm so proud of them. I'm so happy for them. They are equipped and given the tools which they already had. They just didn't know it. Okay. My job. It was never, is never to tell a person what to do. My job is to simply illuminate. My job is, I am a memory coach. My job is to remind you of who you are, okay? And to shine the light on you in areas that you have yet to see, okay? That's what that is. And then from there, you see your tools, you see the resources, and you're able to take those, and move about and do what you need to do while also going within, while also hearing Papa's voice. Okay. My word. So go to the website and you can see everything that I have for you right there. Okay. I also have the most current astrological transits on there. I decipher astrological transits for you because, again, we were talking about evolution. There's always shifting and changing going on both in the heavens and on earth. And so some of us are not proficient in understanding what that means. There's things on there for you to be able to see and understand, and then see how you can tap into that energy, harnessing it for yourself. Okay. So go there, go there. Follow me on social media. You all, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of the things. Dr. Bianca Miss B. Lee. Okay. Y'all, that was awesome. I love you. I mean it. There's absolutely positively nothing you can do about it. Don't you even try it. I want you all, if you celebrate Christmas, have a very, very, very Merry Christmas with your family, with your friends, by yourself if you're by yourself. Enjoy, love, feel, be, celebrate, laugh. Okay? Be present. Put the phones down. Unless you're taking a picture, put the phones down. Get off of social media. Be connected. Be in the moment with your family. Be in the moment with yourself. Watch some movies. Cuddle up. All of that. Be present intentionally, okay? I love you all. Have a very Merry, Merry Christmas. And we will see you back here on Sunday, right here at Divine Femininity United. Peace.